Welcome back, guys. That last video got cut a little short, so I wanted to make this second video to go over some examples, okay? I'm going to go through three distinct examples of some of the more difficult problems when you're dealing with multiplying polynomials and teach you guys a couple more tricks of the trade to help you on your mastery check and your independent practice, as well as the formative at the end of the week. So to start with, let's talk about something a little different. All right, but also something that deals with polynomials. So imagine you're given this situation. You have a cube, not a cube, but actually a rectangular box. All right, so I've got this rectangular, we can call it a rectangular prism, a rectangular box, really anything you guys want to call it, it's fine. But the key here is to know that what is its volume? So let's say it's got a length L, a height H, and a width of W. Okay, I know that my volume V is equal to the length multiplied by the width multiplied by the height. Now, we're going to kill two birds with one stone here. We're going to think about this because we're multiplying three things together. How's that going to work? So, to start with, let's define what L, W, and H are. Now, you will be given this in the problem. So let's say L is equal to n plus 1. W is equal to 2n plus 3. And H is equal to n plus 6. All right? I've got L, W, and H. And I know V is going to be equal to the multiplication of each together. So let's go ahead and write V is equal to length, which is n plus 1, times the width, which is 2n plus 3, times the height, which is n plus 6. Now, guys, anytime you have three distinct polynomials, so we've got 1, 2, 3, it does not matter which order you multiply them together. I'll say that again, guys. When you have more than two polynomials, it doesn't matter which ones you multiply together at first. But it's important that you only multiply two of them together and then multiply the last one by those two, okay? So, for example, you can multiply, what we're going to do in this problem is I'm going to do 1 multiplied by 2, all right? And that's going to give me some new polynomial. And then I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 3, okay? So let's do this example. So let's multiply 1 by 2. All right, we'll write this as n plus 6 times n plus 1 times 2n plus 3. First thing I'm going to do is solve this part here, and then I'm going to multiply the n plus 6 by that. So we're going to set this equal to n plus 6. And now I'm going to do the inside. I've got, remember, I'm going to take this n, multiply it by 2n first. N times 2n is what? Remember, when you multiply variables, the exponents are the same, but the exponents add, but the variables are the same. So this is going to be 2n squared. I then take my n, and now I want to multiply it by 3. There's no variables here, so 3 times n is just going to be 3n. Now let's do the 1. 1's easy because 1 times anything is itself. So 1 times 2n is going to give me plus 2n, and 1 times 3, which is our last step in this multiplication, is going to give me 3 plus 3. All right, bracket this off. And now let's go ahead and simplify this. All right, maybe make some space down here. And let's go ahead and simplify this. So starting over here, we're going to keep our n plus 6. And now we're going to multiply that n plus 6, okay? Check over here, we've got 2n squared. Do you see any other n squared? N, no variable, so nope. So we're just going to write this as 2n squared. For 3n, you see any other just n's? I see this is 2n and this is 3n. So I can add this 3n and 2n together because they are what we call, remember, like terms. So that 3n plus 2n is going to come out to be plus 5n, and the 3 is all alone at the end there, plus 3. All right? Now, this is our next step of the problem. We're now going to multiply the n plus 6 by this whole polynomial here. So to do that, we're going to start by doing the n. So let's multiply this n by this 2n squared. All right? N times 2n squared. There's no coefficient in front of the n, so the 2 stays. All right? The n is going to stay as well. And now what are my exponents? 2 plus 1 should give me 3. Now, moving on to our next term, we've got n times 5n. Again, no coefficient in front of the n. There's a 5 in front of this 5n, so I'm going to keep that as 5. I'm multiplying an n variable, so that's n is going to stay the same. I've got n to the 1 times n to the 1, where I'm going to add 1 plus 1 to give me 2. And that's that term. Last term for the n here is n times 3. No coefficient, so I'm going to keep that as 3. I also see that there's no more variables, so that n is going to stay the same as 3n. All right, now we're done with the n. Let's move on to the 6. 6 times 2n. Anytime you just have a number, guys, without any variable, it doesn't matter. All right, it doesn't matter about the variable. The variables are going to stay the same in these terms over here. So 6 times 2 is 12. So this is going to give me 12n squared. We're now ready to multiply the 6 by the 5n. 5 times 6 is going to give me 30. So this is going to be 30. And again, the variable stays exactly the same because we are multiplying a number by it. So 30n. And lastly, 6 times 3 is going to give me 18. All right. Everyone, we are now ready to write out our volume in its most simplistic term. So let's start combining like terms. So start with 2n cubed. Are there any other terms in here that match variable and exponent? N squared does not match. N doesn't match. N squared doesn't match. Again, n, no. 18, no. So we don't have to change this variable at all. We just put it down here as 2n cubed. We cross that off to say we're done with it. We move on to the 5n squared. What other terms match 5n squared? Remember, coefficients don't matter in this. We're just looking for terms that have n to the 2. We check 3n. Nope, doesn't match. It's n to the 1. Oh, but look, this is 12n squared. So I can add 5n squared to 12n squared. When you're adding terms, remember the only thing that changes is the coefficient. So 12 plus 5 is going to give me 17, and the n squared stays. So that's 17n squared. Again, cross these off. We're done. We can now move on to 3n. I checked the only available last one. Does 3n match with 30n? It does, so I can do that. Does it match with 18? No. So 3n plus 30n, again, I'm adding 3 plus 30. This is going to give me plus 33n. Okay, cross them off. What are we left with? We're left with just the 18. Tack that on at the end here, and that is your volume of that rectangular prism. Okay, guys, I want to review a couple of the things we did here. One, we learned that volume is equal to the length times width times height. We also learned that when you're multiplying polynomials with more than 3 distinct terms, so that's 3 polynomials multiplied together, it doesn't matter which one you start with. So up here, remember, let's go ahead and look back up here at the beginning. I said I want to first start with doing n plus 1 times 2n plus 3. Then I'm going to multiply what I get when I multiply that by the third term here. As you work your way through it, guys, it just comes down to keeping track of what you're doing. I think crossing things out is a great way. Being able to determine what are like terms is going to be hugely valuable as we move forward. Okay? You will have a couple problems like this in your homework, so I hope this was helpful for you all. This is basically the most comprehensive example I could think of. We could do one more just to learn one last notation issue. So let's come down here to make some free space. And what we're going to do is we're going to solve example 2, all right, is we're going to say, what is, simplify the expression 2x squared plus 5 squared. Now all of a sudden we're throwing a square, an exponent, on top of a polynomial. How does that work? Well, remember that this exponent just tells me how many times I'm going to multiply this 2x squared plus 5 by itself. So I can rewrite this as 2x squared plus 5 times 2x squared plus 5. Okay? And now I do it the same way I've done the whole way before. So come down here, we're going to say this is equal to, start with the 2x squared. What's 2x squared times 2x squared? First things first, you have two coefficients, so multiply the coefficients together. 2 times 2 will give me 4. I see I have x, so I know the variable is going to stay x. I also see that I have 2 here and 2 here, so that's going to be 2 plus 2, to give me 4x to the 4th. Now, let's multiply this 2x squared by 5. I have two coefficients, so multiply them together. You get 2 times 5, which is 10. And then I see that this is just, there's no variable over here, so my x squared is going to stay the same. All right? I'm done with that side. So now let's work with the 5. Multiply the 5 by the 2x. Remember, two coefficients, so I multiply the 5 times the 2, which again is going to give me 10. Again, no variable, so it's 10x squared. You keep the variable over here. Then the last one, 5 times 5, which is 5 squared, will give you 25. All right? Now, simplifying it for the last step here, 4x to the 4th. Do we have any other like terms? X squared, x to the 0. No, no, no. So cross this guy out and put him down here as 4x to the 4th. Now we're left with 10x squared plus 10x squared, which are like terms. I can add them together to give me, I'm going to add the coefficients. Remember, only coefficients add together when you're adding. So this is going to be 20x to the 4th, or excuse me, 20x squared. Remember, the x squared does not change. Cross those out, plus 25. Because this has no matching guy. Cross him out. Check your work. We should have no more terms here. And we should have a completely simplistic term down here. All right? So guys, what we've learned so far today, as a recap, we've learned that when you multiply polynomials together, right, really helpful trick. So say you have this ax to the n, right, multiplied by bx to the n, okay? Where a and b are just some numbers. So they can be 2, they can be 4, they can be anything you want. So when you write this multiplication out, you do it part by part. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write a times b. After that, I'm going to write my variable x, and then I'm going to add the exponents n plus n. Okay? As an example, say you have 2x squared multiplied by 3x cubed. When you multiply these, first things first, multiply our coefficients here. 2 times 3 should be 6. Then you know you have the same x, same variable, so you're going to put the x there. You have 2 here, so x squared times x cubed is going to be x to the 2 plus 3, which is going to be finally 6x to the 5th. And that is our completely simplified multiplication. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching these videos. I hope they're helpful. Please use them as references as you move forward into our lessons and as you work on them independent practice and mastery check. I will be available for questions at any time, so please unmute and ask. I will also be doing more examples in live person. Thanks, everyone, and we're almost done with week 1 at eSchool.